You'll just have to wait and find out. You ready, Katie? Got the tape open?
All right, I invite you to stand. Feel free to stay standing, lay down, like I said. Whatever you need to do to seek the Lord.
There is a river where goodness flows. There is a fountain that drowns sorrows. There is an ocean deeper than fear. The tide is rising, rising. There is a current stirring deep inside. It's overflowing from the heart of God, the flood of heaven crashing over us. The tide is rising, rising, bursting, bursting up from the ground. We feel it now, bursting, bursting up from the ground. We feel it now. We come alive in the river. 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 There is a current stirring deep inside. It's overflowing from the heart of God, the flood of fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. To reveal the kingdom coming and to reconcile the lost, to redeem the whole creation. You did not despise the cross, for even in your suffering you saw to the other side, knowing this was our salvation. Jesus, for our sake you died. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. And the morning that you rose, all of heaven held its breath, till the stone was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death. And the dead rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all who'd come to the Father are restored. And the church of Christ was born, and the Spirit lit the flame. Now this gospel truth alone shall not dim, shall not fade. By His blood and in His name, in His freedom I am free. For the love of Jesus Christ, who has resurrected me. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings.
Morning, everybody. If you haven't realized by now, we're not the most organized bunch. So forgive us for that, but we're happy to have everybody here this morning.
Take the one. That one's.
No, it's working? All right. Check. There we go. There we go. All right. So this past Thanksgiving was the first Thanksgiving that we ever had at our house. At the old house, we didn't even have a table, much less room for anybody to be. It was a pretty little house, and the way the kitchen was laid out was like if you put a table in there, you couldn't cook anything. So we never had Thanksgiving dinner. We never had anybody over for dinner at our last house. And we moved to the new house. I wanted to wait till I get a table big enough to hold our families. We both have pretty big families. So finally got a table, and we finally had Thanksgiving at our house. It was cool. This year we had Katie's family there. There were 17 around the table. And in preparation for the meal, I started thinking about who was going to come and like all the different personalities. I don't know how your families are, but our families have characters. People with some stuff and people with issues sometimes. And sometimes people get along and sometimes they don't, just like every family. And when you're bringing 17 people together, plus, a turkey and potatoes and sweet potatoes and all this stuff, it's like everything could go well, but there's a lot of potential for a train wreck when you have that many moving parts. So I was a little nervous about it. And then I just started laughing about it, thinking about like, what would happen if the wheels just came off Thanksgiving? Like, what would that look like? And I thought it'd be pretty funny. The good news was it all worked out well. But it made me think about a parable that Jesus told in Luke chapter 14, 16 to 24. A certain man was preparing a great banquet and invited many guests. At the time of the banquet, he sent his servant to tell those who had been invited, "Come, for everything is now ready." But they all alike began to make excuses. The first said, "I have just bought a field and I must go see it. Please excuse me." Another said, "I have just bought 5 yoke of oxen and I'm on my way to try them out. Please excuse me." Still another said, "I just got married, so I can't come." The servant came back and reported this to his master. Then the owner of the house became angry and ordered his servant, "Go out quickly into the streets and alleys of the town and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame." "Sir," the servant said, "what you ordered has been done, but there's still room." Then the master told his servant, "Go out into the roads and country lanes and compel them to come, so that my house will be full. I tell you, not one of those who were invited will get a taste of my banquet." First, I'd like to go through a little background and context of this parable, and then some lessons that I feel we can apply both to ourselves now and also the ones that heard it the first time out of Jesus' mouth. The same lessons were good then and they're good now. It's timeless. So first, some context. Jesus told this parable to some Pharisees. It said at least there were Pharisees and teachers of the law there. If you start at the beginning of chapter 14, it says that Jesus went to the house of a prominent Pharisee to have a meal. And then along the way, teachers of the law are speaking up, and there's some other things there. So it sounds like a pretty high-class dinner. Some of the best, the cream of the crop, and Jesus got invited to this. The first half of the chapter is a lesson that Jesus is teaching them on being humble and not putting themselves in a place of honor. Do you guys remember the parable where he says, when you take your seat at the table, don't sit at the head of the table, don't sit by the master, but rather sit at the foot of the table, and in time the master will honor you and raise you up. So he's given these very well-to-do, very elite people a lesson on humility to start. And after that, one of the Pharisees kicked back and said, "Blessed is the one who will eat at the feast of the kingdom of God." And I read a lot of commentaries on this, and the consensus of a lot of them is this guy was just kind of saying one of those religious things that just feels like you should say, and he's just putting that out there. Blessed is the one who will eat at the feast in the kingdom of God. From what I read, this guy had no doubt that he would be one of those that would be at that feast, because he was a Pharisee after all. He was a leader. He was one of the important ones. Of course he'd get in. He'd be the first one in. And that was the attitude that we see with the Pharisees a lot in the Gospels, and then starting into Acts as well. And that was all it took. He makes this comment, and Jesus flies into another lesson, and that's the lesson that we just read. As soon as that guy said that, Jesus started into the parable that we just read about the great banquet and the many guests and the ones that were invited and then didn't come and all that. So he says, a certain man was preparing a great banquet and invited many guests. It was customary at the time to send out 2 invitations. The first one was what we would consider the invitation. Are you going to come? RSVP. And he got responses back. I'm coming, I'm coming, I'm coming. Well, these banquets then, they came together when they came together. And time was a little more fluid than it is for us. So the first invitation said, it'll be Wednesday-ish type deal. And then after the banquet was ready, when it was time for everybody to come in, then the servant would go out again and say to all the people that RSVP'd and said they're coming, "Hey, banquet's ready. Come on, Let's get to the party. So the man sends his servant out, and he sends him to collect all those who had responded positively to his first invitation. And that's when the trouble starts. The first guy says, I bought a field, and I need to go look at it. Okay. Second guy says, I bought some oxen. I need to try them out. I need to test drive these oxen. And the third guy says, yeah, I just got married, so I'm not going to be able to make it. The man in the parable had gone to great lengths to prepare this banquet and make everything just right. So with all the work that he did, with all the effort that he put in, all the preparation, I mean, if it took that long to prepare, and if it required 2 invitations to get everybody there at time, he's done a lot. He's made a lot of preparation, so there's no way he's going to have an empty table. There's no way he's going to have an empty party after all that he did. So he says, hey, servant, go out into the town, gather up the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. And the servant comes back and he says, yeah, okay, I did that. We still have room. There's still room. And he says, okay, go out again. And this time go out in the country lanes, all the side roads, the outskirts, beat the bushes. I think this is where that song, In the Highways and the Hedges, you know that song, old time song? I think that's where this one comes from. So he goes out a third time and he says, compel them to come. Like, maybe not force them at gunpoint, but sell it. Let's get the banquet full. Let's get the party full. Get out there and get some people here. So that's the background. That's who he was talking to and sort of the run-through of what he's talking about. And like most of Jesus' teaching, this one has a lot of layers. The parable says a lot. It works on many different levels. The first lesson that I got is that everyone is invited. So the people that were originally invited, the ones that he sent that first invitation out to, the ones who RSVP'd and said, yeah, we'll be there, and also the ones that some of them begged off, those represent the Jews. And it would include the Pharisees. It would include the teachers of the law, God's chosen people. That was where the first invitation went. All of my chosen people, come to my banquet. But some of them didn't make it. Going into town, then, would symbolize the outcasts of Israel. So those who would have been Jewish by birth, but for whatever reason were unclean or unfit or undesirable for some reason. It said poor and crippled and lame and blind, things like that. That would be the outcasts of Israel, also Jews. Then finally, the people in the outskirts, these are our people. I don't know, maybe somebody here is Jewish by birth, but these are our people if you're not. These are the Gentiles. Go out into the outskirts of town. Get in the country roads. Go out the lanes. Find the other people, not the ones that are in, the ones that are out. That'll be the Gentiles. That's us. So those that were listening had no idea what Jesus was setting up here. But we read in Acts how the Gentiles were brought into the fold. We studied that a couple weeks ago. In Jesus' time, the idea that outcast Jews would sit equally at the table with Pharisees and the well-to-do and the upstanding, that was uncomfortable, to say the least. But the idea that Gentiles would sit at the table equally with a Pharisee, with a teacher of the law, unheard of, practically heresy. That's not okay at this time. But it went right over everybody's head. They didn't even see what Jesus was setting up here. The Pharisees, they just knew they would be invited to the banquet. And Jesus, in this parable, I think what he was aiming at them was, yeah, you're invited, but you still have to show up. Some of you might not make it, so I'm going to invite some others. That same lesson works on the literal level that it's presented at as well. The invitation is out there for the rich and the powerful and the ordinary and the undesirable. All are invited. What Jesus established here is that, yes, all are invited, but not because of who they are or what they've done, but because who I am and what I've done, and because I want them there. Being invited isn't something that they can then lord over someone else. And likewise, it's nothing, that invitation is nothing that anyone else can take away from you. It wasn't anybody's to earn or to withhold or to lord over anybody. The invitation was given to all because that's what the master wanted. You were invited because he said so. Second lesson I see comes from verse 21, where the master says, "Go out and get the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame." And it said at the beginning of that passage that we read that the banquet was ready. And he said, quickly go out and get these people. So I can only assume that they were still poor and blind and crippled and lame when they got to the banquet. In other words, not only are all invited, but all are invited to come as they are. They don't first need to learn how to walk if they're crippled. They don't first need to heal themselves and fix up and get everything just right. All are invited, and all are invited to come as they are. God calls us to himself with all our faults and all our failures and all our weaknesses. We don't need to fix up before we accept his invitation. We can come as we are. The third lesson I see is in verse 23, where the host tells the servant to go out of town and find all that they can and compel them to come. The tone here is different than if he said, I guess go out and see if there's anybody like outside of town that wants to come. Tell them it's fine if they do. It's a different tone. He says, compel them to come. I want them to come. Tell them they are invited, each one specifically. They're not going to be in the standing room only. We're not going to put them at the kids' table. We're going to set a place with their name at it. We're going to prepare food for them. We're going to make a place equally among all the other invited guests for these people. I want them each there. It's a host that desperately wants a full table, but he also desperately wants each of the individuals. Satan would love to convince you that you're not worthy or that you're less than or that somehow you don't deserve the same invitation, or if you are and you do manage to get in by the skin of your teeth, you're going to be some kind of second-class citizen. That's not true. The invitation was the same. The banquet was the same. Finally, as presented to the Pharisees and the other important dinner guests, it reminded them that being invited to the table isn't enough. You've got to show up. Being born into a God-fearing home isn't enough. You need to make your own commitment and follow him and follow through. That same lesson holds true for us today. When I thought about our Thanksgiving table this year, it really made me think about how everyone got to the table and why and all that kind of stuff. Everyone was invited, but some for different reasons. I started thinking about that table and I thought about everybody that was there. And then I started thinking about the table in heaven, and just miles long, miles and miles and miles long. Tons and tons and tons of seats, tons and tons and tons of food, and a seat with my name on it, a seat with your name on it, one just for you. I thought that was pretty cool. So at Katie's family, we had all of them there, and they all got invited for different reasons. The three sisters were invited because they were born into the family. They were part of the family by birth, so they got an invitation. All the husbands were invited because we married in. Somewhere along the line, we decided we wanted to be part of the family. We married in. Now we're part of the family too. And then we also had an adopted daughter who got her invitation about a year ago, probably, maybe a little less. Now she's part of the family. So now she's going to have an invitation. And then there was one that we didn't know was coming until the day before Thanksgiving. Shay invited her. I thought she was just coming to hang out after, but that was fine. She got her invitation the day before. She's at the table. We got a place set for her. Whether we respond to God's invitation because we were raised in it and we just always knew about it and were taught from an early age and knew that there was an invitation, whether we accept it because of that, or whether partway through our life we decide to accept his invitation like we did when we married in, or whether it's a last minute thing, like there's one day till Thanksgiving. Hey, do you want to come to our Thanksgiving dinner? Whether you squeak in at the last minute, the invitation is the same, the seat's the same, the food's the same, the place is the same. Everybody's equal there at that table. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how they got there. As soon as we say, yeah, God, we'll be there, I'm in. As soon as we say that, a place is made. The seat is put, the plate is set, the name tag is there, the food's got ready, and it's waiting on us. Then the day comes, the preparation's done, the table's set, everybody that's invited still has to show up. My dad's retired now, but he had an employee once who came to him and said, Don, what can I do to get a raise? I'd really like to get a raise. And Dad said, well, you smoke, right? And he said, yeah. And he said, well, every time you go outside to smoke, you lose 5 minutes. We lose 5 minutes of your time. We lose 5 minutes of your productivity. And you smoke every hour or so. So if you want to get a raise, you can quit smoking. And the guy's like, well, yeah, I should quit smoking. So yeah, I'll do that. I'll quit smoking. Dad said, great. Be in your check next week. And he's, what? You don't want to see if I quit first? And he's like, well, you said you were going to quit. And so I believe you. And if you don't quit, either I'll see you out there or you can come and tell me. And, we'll take that raise back. And I heard the story from my dad, but I heard it first from this guy. And he said, him putting that on me like that was a different motivation than if he would have said, I'll give you a raise when you have quit smoking for 2 months. Because you can just start later, right? I'll just start next week. And then when I can string 2 months together, I'll go in. It was different. He said, I will quit. And Dad said, okay, I believe you. Here's your raise. I think that's the way that we can think about the way that Jesus wants us to follow through, not only to accept his invitation, but he's going to assume when we accept his invitation that we will stick with it, that we will follow through, and that we will be there when he comes and the banquet's ready. It's not something that needs to be earned. It's simply exchanging a commitment to the world for commitment to Christ. When this guy came for the raise, I'm sure he thought Dad was going to say, well, you can work harder, or I'll give you some additional responsibility, or, maybe you can work more hours. He thought it was going to be something that he was going to earn. And really, all it was is, I want you to exchange your commitment to that thing that distracts you from work for commitment to work. While you're here, I want you to be focused. And that's really the way that we can think about our commitment to Christ. We can't earn it, but we do need to exchange our commitment to the world, and our commitment to sin, a commitment to distraction and all of our stuff for a commitment to him. In the same way, I told God I'm in. And many of you have too. I accepted his invitation. Will I take my place, or will my commitment to him be overshadowed by my commitment to all my stuff, to my job, to my relationships? It isn't that my stuff and my job and my relationships are bad. It's just I need to make sure my commitment to him isn't overshadowed by those things. My commitment to him needs to be first. It needs to be my priority. If you're here with us here this morning in a church, weird as it is, it's still a church. If you're here with us this morning, there's a good chance that you've accepted that invitation. If not, good news. You're invited. If you've never heard that before, you've heard it this morning. You've got an invitation. At the end of the day, though, regardless of when or how or why we accept the invitation, we still need to be ready to take our seat when the preparations are done. We have no idea when that's going to be, but we just need to be ready. Being born into it is no guarantee, as we saw with the Pharisees, and being a total disaster your whole life is no exclusion. The invitation still stands. Whether you were born into it or you squeaked in at last call, it doesn't matter. You still have to accept it for yourself. You still have to follow through. Through this parable, Jesus delivered some tough news for the ones that were invited and then made a bunch of excuses. He said, these will never get a taste of his banquet. This morning, you are invited, each one individually. Accept that invitation. If you already have, be vigilant. Remember your commitment and be ready when we get the call. Our meals here, the ones that we have at home, for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, for Easter, all those things, they're an imperfect picture of that perfect feast that we'll sit down to one day. But our time here on earth, our time in church, our time with family, our time doing those dinners, doing this here, it's good. It's a good way to practice. It's a good way to help us stay ready. And it's a good way to help us keep from the distractions that would otherwise pull us away. Like those 3 men that just couldn't make it. I just had something better to do. I had something else. At our table here at church, we have young and old. We have rich and poor. We have healthy and sick. We have those who had an easy trip to the table because they live right there, and we have others that had a really hard time getting here. We have some that have come a long way to be here this morning. Some of us are sons and daughters. Some of us are adopted. Some of us are strong. Some of us are weak. When we eat, some of us help ourselves, and some of the little guys need their food cut up into bites that are easier to chew so they don't choke. You get what I'm saying? At God's table, all are invited, so it should come as no surprise to us that all kinds of people are going to show up. When they do, let's encourage the young and learn from the old. Let's use our wealth to be generous with the ones who don't have as much. Let's use our health to restore the sick. Let's remember that some have had a really hard road to get here. Some of us have been through some stuff. Let's use our church family to provide a home for someone that feels alone. Let's lean on the strong. Let's be patient with the weak. Let's cut the truth that we're talking about here on Sunday mornings into bites that are small enough to chew for those that are new, so that they don't choke on it. And most of all, let us remember that we were individually invited to his table. And we need to individually accept that invitation and be ready when he is ready to take us home. Inviting us to your table. Though we're so unworthy, though we've walked away, though we've failed you so many times, God, thank you for inviting us to your table. Give us the strength and the fortitude and the perseverance that we need to be ready when your banquet's ready and it's our time to take our seat. And God, help us to tell those, everyone out there that might not know that they're invited, that there's a place there for them too. You want to get ready for them. You want to give them a seat. You want to put them in their rightful place as you design them to be. Help us to be instruments to spread your word, to spread your love, to spread your invitation so that that table will be as full as it possibly can be. We love you this morning. Thank you for all your blessings. Thank you for the food that we're going to eat. Thank you for the hands that prepared it. Thank you for each one that's here and everything that they mean to us. In your name we pray. Amen. I invite you to sing with us as we finish this one out.
table of the Lord. He says, come just as you are to his table.
Thanks for coming, everybody. You are dismissed.